More outfielder talk coming your way next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5. As always, make sure to follow and stream us on Spotify. Today is Tuesday, February 22nd. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Scott White. And if we're talking outfielders, we've got to talk Christian Yelich versus Cody Bellinger, two of the most polarizing players this offseason, Scott. Once top 5 players for fantasy baseball, former MVPs, now 8th round picks. What do you think about the two? And do you actually target them in this range?
I don't personally. There are still a lot of, I think, predictably high-end players here as opposed to these two, where you're gambling on a bounce back without much evidence that one is on the horizon. You're just trusting they're young enough. You look at their track record; they both won MVPs, as you said, and you're hoping that that they can get back to that. So if that's the standard, getting back to that MVP caliber production, then I tend to think Bellinger has a better chance of that, because I see Yelich's decline as more of a true decline, whether it's health related. We know he's had back issues, and then that's obviously sidetracked players like him in the past. Bellinger, it seems more like coming off the MVP season, he talked about changing his hitting mechanics, and then he had the shoulder injury in the playoffs in 2020, wound up having surgery that led to more mechanical changes. And I just feel like he's such a mess mechanically that explains why he was completely useless in fantasy last year. And whether or not he can regain those old mechanics, I don't know, but it could be very sudden if he does. Yelich, he was better than useless last year, unlike Bellinger, but he still wasn't that useful. You know, he still needs to be a lot better than he was to live up to this ADP. So it's a big risk in both cases, and I think it's just a little too much of a risk for me.
Yeah, perhaps the two biggest risk-reward players in fantasy baseball this season, Christian Yelich and Cody Bellinger. Let's get into sleepers, breakouts, and busts in the outfield, Scotty, and we'll start with your favorite sleeper at the position.
Oh, goodness. I have a lot of sleepers I like. It's obviously a big position. It's kind of deep, but I'm going to say Connor Joe of the Rockies. He's part of what I'm calling the rebuild, the leadoff trio. Connor Joe of the Rockies, Lane Thomas of the Nationals, Rafael Ortega of the Cubs, guys who've hung around in the minors for a long time, but got a chance with rebuilding clubs last year, primarily as leadoff hitters, and all three delivered. Connor Joe was the most impressive, though. He was a guy who was reaching base at a 400 clip in the minors, reached a 387 clip with the Rockies, got all the benefits of Coors Field. You look at his home away splits, typical Rockies hitter, but that's fine because he's still going to be with the Rockies. And they liked him so much as an injury fill-in last August, they were prepared to move him to center and keep giving him at bats out of the leadoff spot. He hurt his groin, so we didn't get to see how it played out. But what he did deliver, 3.13 fantasy points per game, that was as good as Mitch Haniger last year. So if he can continue to get those regular bats for the Rockies, Connor Joe could be a big surprise.
I'm right there with you, Scotty. Love Connor Joe this upcoming season. He's just going so late, has the opportunity to be the leadoff man for the Colorado Rockies. Not a good lineup, but obviously a fantastic venue to hit in. Your favorite breakout in the outfield, Scotty, is whom?
So Joe Adell is the first name that comes to mind, kind of a post-type sleeper to former top, just as recently as last year, according to some publications, he was a top 10 prospect. And once, he put up huge power numbers in the minors. Once he got to the majors, the strikeout rate was not bad. He struck out 40% of the time when he got his chance in 2020 and just looked completely overmatched, was clearly rushed to the majors. Last year, got that number under control in the majors, and you could see him really growing into his tools if he's continuing to strike out at less than 25% of the time. That's something he's going to be able to thrive with, and obviously he should get a chance from the get-go this year. I also want to mention Kyle Schwarber here. Less traditional breakout, but I do think there's a chance he puts up career best numbers this year because he was on a career best pace last year between the Nationals and Red Sox, had made some changes to his stance, got back to getting his legs involved in a swing like he was in college and early in the minors. And I could see him being more like a 40 to 45 homer guy than the 30 to 35 homer guy we've known.
All right, we're 3 for 3 so far, Scotty. I'm with you. Connor, Joe Adell, Kyle Schwarber. I like all three of those names. And then we get to busts in, let's say, 20 seconds or less. Who is your biggest bust in the outfield?
It's got to be Randy Arozarena, one of the biggest overachievers according to StatCast last year. His XBA, his X-Slug both made him out to be some kind of light-hitting utility infielder. And then, the 20 steals are why his value is being elevated so much. He was 20 for 30 last year, so not a great success rate. I could see him running less on top of everything else.
All right, for more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, your smart speakers, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. We'll be back again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.